Hi, I'm Pastor Kurt, and this is your 5-minute Bible study. Today, we're going to look at John chapter 18, verses 1 through 11. This is the scene when Jesus is arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane. It's a familiar scene to many of us, but we need to pay real close attention to the details here. Because remember, the Gospel of John is quite different than the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Although all four Gospels paint a slightly different picture of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are very similar. John is quite different. We see some examples of that difference here in this scene. Well, the scene begins like we would expect. Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, and Judas brings the soldiers to come and arrest him. What we don't see here is Judas kissing Jesus. That's the moment in the Garden of Gethsemane story that many of us know about, that Judas points out Jesus to the guards by saying, "The one I kiss is the one." We don't get that here in the Gospel of John. Instead, Judas just brings the soldiers. Well, then how do they know who is Jesus, right? It's not like Jesus has a big glowing halo around his head or a neon arrow pointing at him, right? How do the soldiers know which person in the garden is Jesus? Well, Jesus asks them. He says, "Who are you looking for?" And they say, "Jesus of Nazareth." And he says, "I am he." Well, at least that's how the New Revised Standard Version translates it. In the Greek, all he says is, "I am." Now, throughout the Gospel of John, we have heard Jesus say, "I am" a bunch. There's, "I am the good shepherd," "I am the living water," "I am the bread of life." All of these different "I am" statements show up here in the Gospel of John. Here in the Garden of Gethsemane, though, when Jesus says, "I am," it is the only case of an "I am" statement in the Gospel of John that does not have a predicate nominative. Okay, what's that? That's the part that comes after the "I am," like good shepherd or bread of life or living water, right? Okay, those are the predicate nominatives. Here, Jesus just says, "I am." The English translation in the NRSV adds the he, right? "I am he." Why is it important that he just says "I am," though? Because think back to the story of Moses and the burning bush. When God revealed God's name to Moses in that burning bush, God's name is "I am." When these guards come to arrest Jesus, and Jesus says, "Who are you looking for?" They say, "Jesus of Nazareth," and he says, "I am." He's telling them that he is God. And this connects back to the prologue, the very beginning of the Gospel of John. When we hear about the Word was with God at the beginning and the Word became flesh and lived among us, all of that beautiful stuff. Jesus is God with us. And here, he flat out tells the soldiers who have come to arrest him, "I am," right? This is God. And the soldiers respond by falling on the ground. They realize that they are in the presence of God. We don't normally think about that when we think about this Gethsemane scene. We think about Judas kissing Jesus, the soldiers arresting him and leading him off to the rest of the Passion story. But here, when we hear Jesus say, "I am," it's a reminder to us that he is God in our midst and that he is in charge. Early on in this scene, we hear the scriptures say that Jesus knew what was about to happen. Jesus went willingly with these soldiers. As we look at the rest of the Passion story, we will see that even though Jesus suffered, that he was always in charge. This is how the Gospel of John describes Jesus to us here. That even in this moment when he's arrested, when it seems like things are falling apart, he is still God and he is still in charge. Well, after the soldiers arrest him, Peter draws his sword and chops off the ear of one of the guys who came to arrest him. That we hear about in the other Gospels as well. But Jesus then promptly tells Peter, "Put your sword away." Peter is trying to intervene. He is thinking that somehow Jesus is not in charge, that Peter has to step in and help. But because Jesus is God, he is in charge. Now, think about your life. Think about times when you try to take charge of a situation, like Peter did. When you try to step up and grab the reins. Remember, even when it seems like things are falling apart all around you, like it probably felt for Peter, remember, Jesus is still in charge because he is still God. There's your 5-minute Bible study. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.